Hey, my name is John Shields. Welcome to another Theory Thursday. Today, we are not looking at the theory on a piece of music, and we're not looking at music theory in a recording. Today, we are looking at the theory behind the instrument itself, the guitar. Where does it come from? How old is it? Where does the word come from? Today, we're looking at the evolution of it. We go from medieval Spain with classical guitars all the way up to electric guitars, the crazy shapes that you and I both know and love today. So today I'm wearing my gray tweed tie, and I have my Timex Weekender on with the black band. It is a little different, I swear, because the face of this one is like a paper white, whereas my olive one has like a cream colored face. So that's that. But that's what we're doing today. Happy you're here, and let's get to it. Just another version of the classical guitar. Next, I'm going to grab my steel string. So in the evolution of guitar, that's what comes next. We have our, debated oud, lute, and then Spain. We get the classical guitar, Spanish guitar, some people call it, which is this. And then next in the evolution is the steel string. And this is what that looks like. Okay, this is a steel string acoustic guitar. As you can see, it's still an acoustic guitar. All right, not much has actually changed in the next step in the evolutionary process here. There's still a big honking body with a big reverberation chamber here. You'll see we've moved away from the wood tuners going horizontal, and now we get steel pegs going up and down, and the gear apparatuses are now sealed, so it's a lot less easy to do damage to them, get gunk in them, and all that stuff. So just in general, just a quality of life improvement in the tuners. Headstock, still a big piece of the guitar. As you can see, we still have our nuts. Neck stays the same. You can see this one also has two pieces of wood. Has the neck. You have the actual neck that's attached to the guitar and the headstock. And then you have your fretboard or fingerboard, which is what the frets are laid upon. Okay? All comes down to the bridge, and then you have your white piece of saddle there. All right? So all of that stays the same. The difference is we've changed the tuners. And we've changed, we're not tying strings at the bottom here anymore like we were on the classical. We now use what we call bridge pins, and they actually stick in there using friction. And it can handle, this guitar is built to handle a little bit more tension than what we're used to on a nylon string. Why? Because we're using all steel strings now. Okay, it's a little bit more heft to them and a little bit more sound. So actually, I forgot to play the classical. We're gonna cut to me back holding the classical, and we'll do a little demonstration on the sound of it, what it sounds like, and we'll come back and I'll play this, and you'll get an idea. But as you can see, not much has changed besides the shape. Obviously, has changed a little. This is a lot bigger, just equals more sound. And actually, what happens is this part of the guitar handles a lot of the bass notes, whereas this half of the body handles a lot of more the treble notes. So you get a bigger bout down here, and you produce a little bit more oomph in your bass side of things anyway. So let's go back and hear the classical guitar, and then we'll switch back to this and hear the steel string. Here's that classical guitar, and as you'll hear along with these, the nylon strings are a lot more mellow, whereas the steel strings, and as we get into electrics, are just a little bit more harsh. So. Okay, we're back to the steel string. Like I said, it'll be a little bit more harsh than the nylon. So that's the steel string. This is a Taylor 414 CE. And that's that. Let's go to the next one. What comes next in the evolutionary process? We have the classic guitar, we have the acoustic steel string. We introduce electronics into the mix and we get this. What the heck is this? This is what you would see in between an acoustic and when I say electric guitar, you're probably thinking of a solid body. So this is an acoustic electric guitar. Now what's changed between this and what we've talked about already? Headstock, same as the steel string. We still have our nut here controlling everything. The neck stays the same. You have your neck wood and you have a fretboard laid on top of it, okay? Now what gets weird is when we get to the body here, there's a bunch of switches, a bunch of knobs. So what people were doing, and this was 1930, I want to say 1930s is when pickups were introduced. Now back then they were kind of looked down upon, they were unreliable, and there were feedback issues because there's still this big hollow space in your guitar. So what would happen is you would have a pickup, and they didn't look like this. These come later on. These are what we call humbuckers, but we'll talk about that in a sec. You would have a pickup here, and what would happen is you'd play your guitar, and sound would reverberate in the chamber like it does on the others, and it would come out. But whatever you're hooked up to would come out of the amplifier as well. And what would happen is the sound from the amplifier would also get into the guitar chamber, and then it would pick up on the pickups, and all of a sudden you have this feedback loop, and it sounded gross and disgusting and loud, and no one liked it. So pickups back then were used very sparingly and not a lot, and pretty much were useless. So that was electric guitars. However, the idea of these big, we call them hollow bodies now, because when you think of an electric guitar, you think of a solid body without the big chamber. But they still make these because it's traditional in the jazz education. The tradition was, at least jazz guitar was built using hollow bodies. And there are, of course, exceptions. The Telecaster, for one, is the first thing that comes to my head. A lot of great players played the solid body Telecaster. And, I mean, different genres within jazz. You think of gypsy jazz, Django Reinhardt. That's an acoustic guitar he's playing. Anyway, the bulk of it is what we call a hollow body. Now, all this is the same from the neck down to about here. And then we get to the pickups, which we talked about. They're magnets with coils wrapped around them, and you pluck a string and the vibrations of the string are picked up on the pickup. That's why they're called that, and translated into the wires, and then you're plugged in here into an amplifier, and you're off to the races. Now, all of these knobs and switches, and they differ from guitar to guitar, but in general, if you have a switch like this, that's selecting whatever pickup you want. And then there's usually a volume knob. I have two pickups here, and that's why there's two sets. You have a volume knob and a tone knob, and it doesn't really matter or anything unless you have one. So that's where that comes in. Now, the other thing, that makes this different is you take a look at the bridge. Now, on the other guitars we've seen, the bridge doesn't move. It's glued right onto the body. But as you can see with this, it's what we call a floating bridge, because it can actually, if I were to take the strings off, this would fall right off. The only thing keeping this in place is the strings pressing down on it. And that's why this is called an arch top. So what we've looked at previously are called flat tops because strings make contact with the nut, like we talked about. They come all the way down, they make contact with the bridge, and then that's where they stop. They come down, they're tied down, or they're held down with a bridge pin. And what happens here is the string makes contact with the nut, come all the way down, they hit the bridge, and then the string keeps going into the tailpiece, and the tailpiece grabs the strings and holds them tight, similar to like a bridge pin. But because the strings are stretched out and not coming straight down, you get a little bit of a different sound, and the bridge acts as an arch top. It kind of is like a house, little point to the top there. And that's why it's called an arch top. There's a little bit of a different sound, and it's enough of a difference to call it something different. So that's the arch top. So that is the hollow body acoustic electric guitar. So something like this, you are going to be able to hear. So you can still kind of hear it because there's still a reverberation chamber that the sound can come out of, okay? So let's go to the next one. What comes next? Okay, last thing here, we have the solid body electric guitar. Now this came around in 1950 by a guy named Leo Fender. And actually, there's a great book called The Birth of Loud, and it documents the whole process with Leo Fender, Les Paul, and a guy named Bigsby. And all three of them were actually kind of, I would say, co-creators of the solid body. They all kind of worked on it in their own way. But Leo Fender gets the credit because he was the first one to produce the mass-produced, totally publicly accepted solid body guitar, and that's where this comes in. This is a Telecaster, and there's a lot more history behind it, but this was called the Broadcaster, and then some copyright issues came into play with another company named Gretsch. And if you want to know, it's a crazy story. It's a crazy story of how it all even happened. So if you are interested in it, I do recommend. It's a book called The Birth of Loud, and I have it right here actually. The author is Ian Port. Go read it. It's a fantastic read. It's a lot of history in it, but it reads like a story. So it's a fantastic book. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the different types of electric guitars. We're here to talk about the history of the guitar, and this is just a stepping stone in the history. So we get the solid body electric guitar. Now, what's the big difference here? You have a headstock. Now, what you're going to notice here is there's tuning pegs all on one side. Usually it's 3 and 3 from what we've seen up to now. That was just a choice by Fender. It doesn't change the tone or anything. It actually just is ease of use. So when he was thinking about it, he actually didn't play. He wanted all the tuners lined up just for ease of use. Okay? So they're all modern, sealed, geared. We have our white nut here. All the strings run through. Now here, we haven't seen this yet, is an example of where the fretboard is the same wood as the neck. So as you can see here, you have your neck wood, and then there's no fretboard that's laid upon it. It's just, there's the neck, and then the frets are put on it. There's no transition. The neck is the fretboard. So that's kind of cool. This is the first time we've seen that, and this is all maple. Okay, so that's all the same, minus the fretboard thing. But this is where things get crazy. Now, you don't see a big reverberation chamber here. It's just a plank of wood. And when this first came out, people made fun of it. They said it was a boat paddle because it kind of looks like one. And actually, it would make a pretty good paddle because the paddle's pretty big. But what does this solve? Well, if you remember me talking about the hollow body, the big issue was feedback with the amp. The sound would come out of the amp. It would get into the chamber of the guitar, and the pickups would read it, and it would come out of the amp again, and it was an endless loop, and then things got real nasty real quick. So what did they do? They took out the chamber. It's just a piece of wood with pickups in it. So the sound you're getting is the pure vibrations of the string. There's no echoing and bouncing off within any reverberation chamber. It's just an electric guitar. There's no acoustic part of it. So like I said, if there's a switch on the guitar, it's most likely picking whatever pickup you're going to use. You have your volume, you have your tone, and that's it. The bridge looks different than what we're used to. The saddles look different than what we're used to. So, and actually it is on the hollow body. I didn't mention it. On the classical and acoustic guitars we saw, the saddle was one long piece of bone or synthetic bone or plastic or whatever it was. One long piece. On the electric guitars, it's the solid body or the hollow body. Each string has its individual steel. Well, actually, usually they're brass, coated in chrome steel, but they're metal saddles. And you can adjust each one individually. So that's the difference between the electric bridges and the acoustic bridges. Okay, now this one, because there's no reverberation chamber, it's going to be a little hard to hear. Like if you talk too loud, you're going to drown out the guitar, kind of thing. And there you go. So this is where we're at today. Because there's no need for a reverberation chamber, you can make guitars in whatever shape you want, really. So people start getting crazy with them. You see big V's, stars, it doesn't matter. As long as there's a pickup across the strings, you can pretty much get a guitar sound out of something that doesn't look anything like a guitar. So that's the history of the guitar. Starting way, way, way back with controversy about where the word even comes from, to today where people are playing things that almost look like boat paddles. That is the guitar. Now, what am I playing mostly today? Let me put it this way. So today, mostly what I play is jazz. Jazz and classical, but more so jazz. And because of the tradition of jazz, this is my main guitar. It's an Ibanez AF75, and it is a workhorse. It has not done me wrong yet, and gets me from point A to point B anyway. But this is my main guitar, so depending on what genre you're looking to go into, or what your journeys might look like, you might think about getting a different guitar. Now, starting off, it doesn't really matter. Electrics are going to be a little bit easier because the strings are a little bit thinner, and the tension's a little bit lighter as well, and it makes it easier on your fingers to press down on the frets. Acoustics, on the other hand, especially steel strings, you're going to be pressing down a little bit harder to get the sounds you want. It's going to be a little bit rougher on your hands because the strings are thicker, and running metal wires through your fingers every day is bound to cause a change in physiology. So just a word of warning there. So depending on what kind of genre you're looking to go into, you might think about looking at a different guitar. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. That was a ton of information. So if you stayed with me the whole time, thank you. That's great. And there's even more history than that. It's a long, amazing, thought out history. And so thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.